Want to hit the rumor mill? Sabres are linked to a star defenseman in the NHL. We'll talk about it, what it will cost, how the player would fit in, and whether or not this is just an overall good idea for the Buffalo Sabres. That is upcoming here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including our YouTube channel. So be sure to check us out on YouTube, Locked On Sabres, where you can watch the show. Joe DiBiase here on the show today. We've got a trade episode of the show today. Not a trade that has happened, but a trade that could happen, a trade the Sabres have been linked to, and a player that I think is really interesting of an idea for the Sabres, and whether or not they would do it, we will see. At Sneaky Joe Sports to follow me on Twitter, at Locked On Sabres to follow the podcast account. And we always are looking forward to our fans getting connected with the show, whether that be on Twitter or comment section of our YouTube channel. Keep it clean out there, everybody. Today's YouTube question goes to Mark Skarupa on YouTube. He says, would you still trade Cousins, Peterka, and a number 1 for Jason Robertson? That was the trade I made up before the season for Dallas Stars star Jason Robertson when he was being rumored to be available. He, of course, now is not, and he is a superstar, and he is off and running. I think I saw his stats the other day. He's over a point a game. I know that. He might even be over a goal a game. No, close to it, though. 19 goals, 17 assists, 36 points in 23 games played for Dallas. So, yeah, I would, because Jason Robertson is just that amazing. But that is not the name, by the way, we're going to talk about trade-wise today. But Robertson's not available anymore. He's too good. He's back in Dallas. There's no reason to think they would trade him. They never really should have traded him. It was kind of stunning that his name was out there in the first place. But I would trade Peterka, Cousins, and a number 1 for him. Absolutely. The name we are going to talk about today on the Locked On Sabres podcast is Arizona Coyotes defenseman Jakob Chychrun. Chychrun has been linked to the Sabres with a couple of different rumors. We had Lance Lysowski of the Buffalo News report that the Sabres have been talking with the Coyotes about Chychrun, and also Jeff Merrick from Sportsnet called the Sabres a dark horse. He's heard the Sabres are a dark horse candidate to acquire Jakob Chychrun of the Arizona Coyotes. So we'll go over what kind of fit Chychrun is in, what the contract looks like, what the trade would cost, and all that needs to be known about this player and this idea if you are not super familiar with the Coyotes. As Finn joins the show, for those watching on YouTube, Finn just wants to participate, I guess. Didn't need to do that for the listeners, so sorry about that, but just stunned me out of the corner of my eye. So if I seem spooked, that was why. Anyways, Jakob Chychrun, when you look at his contract on Cap Friendly, we have a pretty manageable contract for the Coyotes defenseman. He has 3 years left, including this season, at $4.6 million per year. Now, he has a modified no-trade clause that kicks in 2023-24, so next season and the year after. He has 2 years of a modified no-trade clause. That is when the player will submit a 10-team no-trade list. So if the Sabres want to do this deal, they have to do it now, because you should assume, if you're the Buffalo Sabres, that you are going to be on everybody's no-trade list. So Chychrun currently available at $4.6 million. The cap works beautifully. We're talking about a 6'5" defenseman. He is 24 years old, so the contract will expire at age 26, so still in age range for another big extension. He is a left shot defenseman. And that, we'll talk about the fit a little bit, because that makes it a little bit hairy if the Sabres were to acquire him. But he fits for cap purposes. Not that the Sabres are near the cap, but if they ever get near the cap, $4.6 million for a defenseman of his caliber is very solid. 6'5", it works for the physical nature that some fans might want to see the Sabres possess. They are not the meanest team in the world. I don't really need to see them be the meanest team in the world, but Chychrun would help them on that front. Also, he is a good skater. He is a good puck mover. He's just a good overall, all-around defenseman. He is offensive enough for the position. He, in fact, scored 18 goals for the Coyotes 2 years ago, and that was only playing 56 games. So over a 20-goal pace 2 years ago, playing only 56 games. 18 goals, 41 points. Last year for the Coyotes in 47 games played, 7 goals, 14 assists for 21 points. He is an offensive defenseman. He has averaged over 20 minutes a night every year of his career, except his rookie season when he was an 18-year-old for the Coyotes. He's one of those guys that jumped right in to the NHL at age 18 in his draft year. And that was with being a 16th overall pick, by the way. A lot of times you will see rookies jump right from the draft to the NHL when they're picked first, second, or third. Chychrun was picked 16th. That's a lot later than you normally see that, but he was so physical right away. I remember actually way back, like I remember in college, I used to be a subscriber to the Hockey News, like the magazine edition. I don't get the paper magazines anymore, but I used to, and I would bring them to school and I would read them during my breaks between classes. And I remember one issue where Chychrun was on the cover, and this was before maybe he was even at the OHL level. It was about him being the next generational prospect because I should have double checked this before I got the show rolling. I think he's one of those guys that got exceptional status, like McDavid and Tavares and Gretzky back in the day. Sean Day actually is another one. One of those underage guys that got permission to play in the OHL before he was eligible. I don't have. I just Google searched it and I didn't see it. Yeah, I didn't see it come right up. So maybe that's wrong. Maybe he didn't get exceptional status. But either way, I remember being on the cover of the Hockey News as this is the next big thing. And this kid is a freak athlete already. He's huge at 15 years old. He was mature beyond his years as a teenager. And it's part of the reason why he was able to jump right into the NHL, which means he's already got 341 games of experience. So that part of it helps for the Sabres as well. If you're trying to help out an Owen Power, you're trying to help out any of their young defensemen along the way. I mentioned offensive. Watching his game, he's deceptively quick, especially with his hands. He has very good hands. He can stick handle. He can make moves on guys, and that is not traditionally what you'll see out of a 6'5" physical defenseman. But he can move. He can skate with the puck, and he's got a very big shot, and that allowed him to score 18 goals a couple of years ago. By the way, he scored 12 the year before that, so it's not like that was a complete flash in the pan. So he's got all the tools you need, but he is a better defenseman with all those tools than, for instance, a Rasmus Ristolainen, someone that did have all the physical tools, but never really seemed to put it together. Ristolainen really lacking that hockey IQ that it took to be a top pair defenseman and log 23 minutes a night the way Chychrun has and Ristolainen has. Chychrun, much better in that department. Does not make dumb plays in his own end. Does not really feel pressure the same way that Ristolainen would. So he feels like a tools guy on the blue line while possessing enough of the mental capabilities to really to turn that into the type of results that you need playing in the top four for whoever he may be playing for, whether that's the Coyotes going forward, maybe the Sabres, or somebody else that jumps into the mix. The Islanders, by the way, have been rumored to be in his services. The Blue Jackets have been rumored to be in his services as well. Some of the advanced numbers, Chychrun is good in these departments. This season, it's only 4 games played, but a 48% expected goals for rate. Last year, it took a dip. Last year was at 45% after the year before being at 51%, which is easily the best year. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Not the best year of his career. He did a 52% in 2018-19, 49% in the year in between 19-20. So a good defenseman when you look at the analytical numbers. Corsi for percentage, just a dip below 50%. But remember, this guy has been playing on the worst team in hockey for the last 5 years. And that will damage his results. But given his situation, his numbers actually look better than you might think. So that's kind of the scope of what Jakob Chychrun is. We'll take a timeout here, and when we come back, one, how he fits in into the Sabres blue line if they were to trade for him, and two, what does Chychrun cost to get? And what should the Sabres be willing to offer in order to get this player from the Arizona Coyotes? That is coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. BetOnline.net. It is your number one source for all your sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis this season. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer. You've got the FIFA World Cup going on right now. A lot of good prop bets on the World Cup, esports. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those as well at betonline.net. In fact, BetOnline, I should have checked this before I got rolling as well. Really dropping the ball today. They might actually even have Jakob Chychrun odds. Let's see. They do not. That might be something. They provide those a lot, though, where you'll see a player mentioned in trade rumors, and then BetOnline will come right to the forefront with, this is the odds of him to go in different places. They did that with Jack Eichel last year when he was available. So a lot of odds that are available for you over at BetOnline. You can look up the Calder Trophy odds right now that are available to you. JJ Peterka, Jack Quinn, and Owen Power, all at plus 2,000 to win the award. You can look at the Rocket Richard trophy. That's probably the other one the Sabres would be interested in right now. And Tage Thompson is still at plus 2,500, despite the fact that he is hanging around in that race. Head over to betonline.net. They are the number one place for all your sports betting information. BetOnline, where the game starts. Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with my dog Finn, who's still hanging out, enjoying the show. Has not wanted to chime in yet. Well, if you hear a bark, I'll translate for you. The Sabres are rumored to be interested in Coyotes defenseman Jakob Chychrun. 2 more questions to tackle. How does he fit? And what would it cost? Let's start with how does he fit? If the Sabres were to do this trade, he's a left shot defenseman. It would be really weird if the Sabres had their best 4 defensemen all be left shot defensemen. Dahlin is a left shot defenseman. Mattias Samuelsson is left shot. Owen Power is left shot. And Chychrun is left shot. Little bit exaggerated, though, because Rasmus Dahlin does play on the right. So he really should count as a right shot defenseman. But you would have to decide how you are going to manage Chychrun entering into your blue line. And that is where a conversation between Kevyn Adams and Don Granato would have to be had, and how you're going to utilize this player, how you're going to deploy him in your lineup to make sure that he's still getting enough minutes. Because there are a couple of different options Granato could go with if the Sabres were to make this trade. Option 1 is to put Jakob Chychrun on a pairing with Owen Power. They are not splitting up Mattias Samuelsson and Rasmus Dahlin. I cannot believe that, and it's not a good idea anyway. Dahlin and Samuelsson, they should be conjoined. The second pairing, Owen Power's been playing with Henri Jokiharju. Chychrun would be one of the Sabres' best 4 defensemen. Easily a better defenseman than Henri Jokiharju. It's not even close. So you could deploy 2 super pairs, right? 2 great pairs that will never get controlled on the ice. And that might sound good in theory. One, though, either Power or Chychrun would have to move to the right side. That might be easy for one of them. I don't know, though, that either one can do it. It's one of those things where there are some defensemen around the league that, I'll move to the right side, and they're completely fine. They're the same player, same impact. There are other defensemen. I used to remember Cody Franzen with the Sabres when he was asked to move from the right side to the left on his offhand, and he just could not do it at all. Some defensemen just can't. Power and Chychrun seem like talented enough players to where one would be able to do it, but that's an unknown. That would be something where scouts could tell you that the Sabres would have people in their building that could answer that question for Don Granato and Kevyn Adams of whether or not one of those guys could play on the right side. I'm not sure it matters, though. The best option might be you split all 3 up. And that might sound unappealing because somebody, it's not going to be Dahlin, Power or Chychrun, who you would have traded these assets for, would be relegated to the third pair. And in the NHL, the third pair typically means 15 to 18 minutes a night. Not a lot of minutes, not a lot of special team minutes, just not going to be utilized a whole lot. The Sabres might be in a position there where they could split it up very evenly. And here's some stats to back up that being a good idea of bringing Chychrun in and putting him on a completely different pairing. Because actually, if you look up Owen Power right now, Owen Power has been a dominant defenseman analytically when it comes to possession numbers, when it comes to shot share. Owen Power has been a great defenseman for the Buffalo Sabres so far, almost regardless of who his defense partner has been. That includes Kale Clegg, who should not have ever played for the Sabres, but had to because of all the injuries that they sustained. Power this year is at a 52.6% expected goals for rate at 5-on-5, which is an incredible mark for a 19-year-old defenseman. And if you look at the teammates that he has played with, Henri Jokiharju, his most common teammate, expected goals for expected goals for with Owen Power. There it is. We're talking 50.7% with Jokiharju. That is pretty darn good. With who else is on? Jokiharju, by the way, easily the most played defenseman that he has played with. With Rasmus Dahlin, I don't love that, but with Dahlin, he's at 57%. Dahlin actually plays a little bit better without Power, which is the reason why they should really never be together. Kale Clegg, where the heck is Kale Clegg? Because I know they played a ton of minutes together, but I am not seeing him on the list here. You know why? Because I am looking at last year's numbers. Okay, here we go. Updated numbers for Owen Power, expected goals for this season with certain teammates. With Henri Jokiharju, he has played 100 minutes. 100 minutes with Henri Jokiharju. His expected goals for with Henri Jokiharju is 49.92%, so about the same, really strong. His time with Rasmus Dahlin, 47.8%. They should definitely be apart. Still a good mark, though. Kale Clegg, here it is. With Kale Clegg, 62%. Holy cow. Power's been good. You don't really need, it seems, a Jakob Chychrun on his other pair. He's managing just fine. The third pair has been the problem for the Sabres defensively. If you look at their just goals scored, when they have either Rasmus Dahlin or Owen Power on the ice at 5-on-5, Sabres are outscoring their opponents 48-20. And when Power or Dahlin are not on the ice, the Sabres are being outscored 20-9. That is where the Sabres need to improve. When it's not a lot of time, right? It might be 15 minutes a game. But the minutes that Power or Dahlin are not on the ice need to improve in a big way because they are getting outscored up more than 2-1 when that is the case. Chychrun on a third pair, on paper, a third pair, could alleviate some of the minutes from Dahlin and Power, which I guess could be a good thing, and would make it so that the Sabres never have a bad pair on the ice. Chychrun could run his own pair, Power could run his own pair, and Dahlin and Samuelsson will have their pair. And that might be the way that Granato would want to go about it. Now, you'd have to split that up, right? Right now, if you look at the Sabres stats on the season, in terms of minutes, Dahlin and Power, they do lead the way. They are number 1 and number 2 on the Sabres in minutes. Dahlin at 26 minutes and 6 seconds. Power at 23 minutes and 35 seconds. You bring in Chychrun, and maybe suddenly Dahlin, instead of playing 26 minutes a night, is playing 23 minutes a night. And Power, instead of playing almost 24 minutes a night, maybe plays 20. And Chychrun gets to 19 or 20. So you have Dahlin playing a little bit more, and the other two are playing around 20 minutes a night. I think the math should be able to work out in that favor. And then, you don't have to do that the whole game. If you're down one late, or you could just do this no matter what the score is, late in games, you could just go to 4 defensemen. Put Chychrun up with Power, or put Power around with Dahlin and Samuelsson, Chychrun, whatever you want to do. Just play 4 defensemen. So I think it would fit, even though it doesn't feel like right on paper it would fit. Oh, he's got to go on the third pair, or oh, somebody's got to go on the right side. I think, especially with Don Granato, they would execute his presence on the blue line the right way, and there are a couple of different ways they would be able to do that. What it would cost for Jakob Chychrun, we'll tackle that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. Welcome back to the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. Thanks for making us your first listen. When you're done with us, be sure to make your second listen Locked On Sports Today. Biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. We're debating Jakob Chychrun as a trade idea on today's show. The Sabres played the Red Wings on Wednesday night. We are recording the show just a couple hours before the game. So not much of a preview of the game. Imagining most people listening to this will be listening on Thursday morning after the game has already taken place. Good time for a trade episode. All right. What would it cost for the Sabres to acquire Jakob Chychrun? My inclination, just knowing the player, knowing what the Coyotes have done in the past, and what the Sabres have to offer. And what they have to offer is a lot of picks and a lot of prospects. That maybe more importantly than the picks. The Sabres have 1 first-round pick coming up. They have 3 second-round picks. They have their own second-round pick. They have the Flyers second-round pick, and they have the Golden Knights second-round pick. I don't think, though, you're getting him for you got to put a first. You got to put a first in this trade. I do not think you're getting Jakob Chychrun without a first-round pick being in the trade. But here's the thing. Connor Bedard is in this year's NHL draft. And if you don't know who Connor Bedard is, he is maybe not the next, he's not the next McDavid, but he's a prospect that is on the level of an Austin Matthews. And maybe I'm not even giving enough credit. Maybe he is close to McDavid in terms of the caliber of prospect that he is. You cannot make it possible that you trade away the pick that becomes Connor Bedard. I'm not saying the Sabres should be tanking. I don't want them to be tanking. But if they finish 10th from the bottom and have a 2% chance to win the lottery, then, although I always forget the lottery rules, they might have changed that. You just cannot trade any pick that could become number 1 overall at all. You have to make it conditional. Make it conditional, top 3, top 5, whatever it is. Make it a top 5, a conditional first-round pick that the Sabres would offer, and then choose one of the first-round prospects that is not played yet in the NHL. So, not Dylan Cousins, not Jack Quinn. I know he's a second-round pick, but not JJ Peterka. Look at the trio that you've drafted in the last 2 years. That I wouldn't even include Matthew Savoie. Savoie might be a little too high for me because top 10 pick, and I know he's having a little bit of a down year to start in the WHL. I would not trade Matthew Savoie. One of Noah Ostlund, 16th overall pick by the Sabres this past draft. Jiri Kulich, who was drafted later in the first round this past draft than Ostlund, and Isak Rosen, who was drafted 14th overall with the pick the Sabres got for Rasmus Ristolainen 2 years ago in the NHL draft. He is now in Rochester. One of those 3, Ostlund, Kulich, or Rosen, plus a conditional first-round pick. That, for me, is about the extent I would go. If there's a good market for Chychrun and you feel like, hey, we just need a little sweetener to put this over the top, then throw in one of those 3 second-round picks that you got. But I think the Sabres have the capital to be able to pull this off. They have the capital, really, to be able to outbid anybody. The Blue Jackets are reportedly in on this deal. And I guess the Blue Jackets could tell the Coyotes, hey, we'll make our first-round pick unprotected and we're worse than the Sabres. But I don't think that makes sense. I don't know why the Blue Jackets would do that. I don't think they would. I think the Sabres have the depth of prospects to get this deal done if they really want to do it. And they have the picks that they can get this done if they really want to do it. And my final judgment on this trade, my synopsis on this trade is it's a good idea. It's a really good idea, and I don't see much flaw with it. The contract is nice. The age fits perfectly in what the Sabres are building right now. It's not like they're trading for a 30-year-old to make this season be the year that player is a contributor. 24, like you should get many, many years out of this guy being a big-time player for you. And also, it's time to get good. And the Red Wings, who the Sabres play on Wednesday night, coincidentally, they have passed the Sabres in their rebuild. They have. They have made signings that make it so that they have jumped ahead of the Sabres. They spent money. They made trades in the offseason on veteran players to surround their young core of Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider, to surround them with the pieces they need to get good right now. And now they're sitting in a playoff spot. They're the number 1 wildcard team after a quarter of the season. And also, by the way, they hit on their goaltending. They traded for Ville Husso's negotiating rights. They gave him a big contract. And oh, look, he's really good. They solved their goaltending just like that. Something the Sabres haven't been able to do in a decade. So the Red Wings have passed you. And they've done it through veterans. And they've done it not through old veterans, but like the younger veterans. And that's what Chychrun is. Chychrun fits the age range while making the Sabres better right now. And to me, that is the perfect type of trade for what they should want and for what the stage of the rebuild is. So I'm a yes. I'm a yes on the Jakob Chychrun trade. Let me know if you are too. If you want to reply in the YouTube comments, if you want to send me a tweet at Sneaky Joe Sports or at Locked On Sabres. Enjoy Sabres and Red Wings, or and hopefully it went well. If you're listening to this after the game is over, we'll talk about it on our next episode. So that's going to do it though for us here on Locked On Sabres. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And again, be sure to make your second listen Locked On Sports today, from the biggest games, the instant reactions, big game recaps, the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Talk to you next time here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase.